Hi you guys, what is up? Welcome back. My name is Daniela. Today we're going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2024. 2024 was not my favorite reading year. I came out reading just about 50 books, like a couple less than 50 books, and most of the 5 stars that I read this year were rereads. So overall, it was a pretty medium year, but these are the books that I read that come out on top that I still think about, that I will remember fondly reading in 2024. Let's just get right into them. I thought about the order that I wanted to talk about these in, and I've ultimately decided that I think I'm just gonna go in the order that I read the books in. I have got 10 books to talk about. Let's get right into it. The first is the Cruel Prince trilogy. Definitely not the first book here. This is just the only physical copy that I have. I did not like this book. I almost didn't continue on with the series, and the only reason I did was because I happened to have them on my Kobo from the library and I was on an airplane and I had nothing else to read. But I'm glad I continued with it because I loved these books. This is the first book that I read that exists in like a fae realm. I've never read anything like that before. The first book is a little bit difficult to get into. I had some troubles kind of with the world building, figuring out what was going on. I didn't realize that fairies were so mean, but apparently that's a thing. I always just thought that they were these magical, whimsical kind of creatures. The next book is The Wicked King. I ate that book up. I read it in like 4 hours. I picked it up on the plane, we landed, and then we were like driving to our hotel, and then we got to our hotel and I just like read all the way through until bedtime that day. And I loved it so much. Then I picked up the next book and I read it the next day, read it in like half of the day, just ate those books up. The romance, oh my gosh, the romance in these books is so much fun. It is truly, like, hear me when I say that it is the most subplot of everything that's going on. Like, these are not romance books, but there's just a little romance, and I just ate it up. I loved it so much, and I thought these were so much fun. I'm so happy that I read them, and they will always remind me of 2024. Next up on my favorites list is A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin. This book is about a young woman living in the Regency era in England, and she was forced to marry for money when she was younger. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. She was forced to marry when she was younger. Now she's 28 years old and her husband has just passed away, and she's relieved. She did not have a good relationship with this man. She was not happy, and she was just like constrained in this world because she has no rights as a woman and she's just stuck in this marriage. So now she's 28, she finds herself as a widow, and she has loads and loads of money, and so she decides that she's gonna move with her cousin. Technically she's still in mourning, but she decides to move with her cousin to Bath and kind of figure out who she is as a person and get to know herself again. It's just so beautifully written. There's a romance, there's a little bit of a love triangle situation. She's kind of battling between this new person that she's met that's showing her the world and taking her on all of these adventures, and then her old love that she was very much in love with before she was forced to marry the man who she married, and he kind of comes back in the picture. So she's got complicated feelings there, and then she's with her cousin and she makes some friends, and she's just learning about what she loves and what interests her, how she wants to spend her time, where she wants to spend her time and her days. So sweet and so fun, but also just so beautiful and like reflective of girlhood and reflective of becoming who you are and who you're meant to be. And I highly recommend it. I feel like Sophie Irwin is not talked about enough. She's very underrated, but she has 2 books out. Both of them are 5 stars for me. I just love them so much, and I had so much fun with this book. I'll definitely be coming back and rereading it, and I'm so excited for Sophie Irwin's new book in 2025. Then I read Assistant to the Villain, and I had so much fun with this book. I read the first book in February, and then I just read the second book a few weeks ago in December, and I loved both of them. I had a lot of fun with them. They weren't like 5-star reads for me, but they were both 4-star reads, which is really great, and I would recommend them. I feel like they are the perfect escapism books. They really just take you on an adventure, and you get to dive into this magical storybook world and just get lost. The books follow Evie, and Evie at the beginning is coming out of a bad situation and she's looking for a new job, and she literally runs into the villain of her kingdom. The villain meets her and instantly offers her a job. He's like, hey, I'm actually hiring an assistant if you want to be my assistant, and she's like, okay, yeah. And so she comes into work and she kind of shakes things up because she is working for a villain. This book has a whole cast cast of really fun, really interesting characters. There's even a little frog who, like, he holds up signs all the time and he's so silly and so funny. And you kind of go on the adventures with Evie and the villain as they are kind of wreaking havoc on the village and on the kingdom. And as you kind of go on these adventures with them, you kind of find out more and more about the villain and why he is the way he is, how he became the villain. The author has done a really good job of writing this character as the villain, but it's so morally gray, shall we say, and you really do find yourself rooting for the villain character and not for the supposed good guys in the book. This book is just so plotty and like escapist, and I read both of them in just one day. I physically read the first book and then I listened to the second book on audio, and I highly recommend listening to it on audio. I think the day that I listened to this one, I listened to like 11 and a half hours in one day. So I just had my headphones on all day. I was like looking for tasks to do so that I could keep listening to this book, and I had a really good time with it. I'm really looking forward to the third one. I think it's gonna be really fun as well. Both of the first and the second book ended on pretty big cliffhangers, so I'm really intrigued to see how the series continues. But yeah, I think these are just great fun books, and I really enjoyed my time with them this year. Then after that, we have Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I read one Abby Jimenez book before this one and I liked it, but I was so pleasantly surprised by Just for the Summer. I love this book. I ate this book up. I think about this book all of the time, and it's truly just such a good book. This is about Emma and Justin, and they both have like a curse on them where whenever they date someone, as soon as they break up, that person goes on to meet their soulmate. So they decide one summer to meet up and date for the summer because they think as soon as they break up, they'll go on to meet their own soulmates. And so it kind of starts off as this like fun, light, bubbly book about two people that are just going out for fun. They're spending a summer together. They're like not catching feelings. They've made up a list of rules of like what they can do, what they can't do. And then life just sort of happens. There's so much more than just a romance in this book. There's so much, just so many complex relationships and so many difficult things that the characters are walking through that it's just so reminiscent of life. And I think Abby Jimenez wrote it and handled the whole situation very beautifully. I think it was like realistic with kind of everything that was going on, but also the way that these characters just cared for one another was so beautiful to see. Also, Justin is the blueprint. He's everything. I absolutely loved my time with this book, and I can't wait to read it again this summer. Okay. Then it was April, and so of course I picked up Funny Story by Emily Henry. I'm sorry that you've probably seen these two books on every single favorites list of the year, but for good reason. I'm an Emily Henry girl. I have read every book. I happened to read Beach Read like the week it came out. It just happened to be on my library hold, and I don't know how I found it, but I'm so glad that I did. I'm so glad that Emily Henry is in my life. I have loved every single one of her books. None of them have been a flop for me. Each and every one of them have worked for me in a different way. My favorite always and forever is Happy Place, but this one is a very close second. Like, it's almost tied. I love this book. This is about Daphne and Miles, and Daphne is a quiet girl. She's found someone who loves her and takes care of her and has a lot of money, and she's happy and she's just floating along in life until one day her fiance goes on his bachelor trip with a bunch of his friends, and one of them is his female best friend from childhood, and he comes home and says, "Hey Daphne, actually I'm in love with my best friend and I'm calling off the wedding, and this house we live in, I own it, so you have to leave." And so Daphne finds herself in the middle of a mess, and then one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, she has moved in with her ex's new girlfriend's ex. It's just so insane, but she's now roommate with the ex of the person who her ex left her for, and they're both just like sad together. They were planning on spending the rest of their lives with these people, and now they've both been kind of ditched, and they have to figure out where to go from here. Oh, this book. Like, this book is truly everything to me. This book is just as much a relationship story, a story of Daphne and Miles kind of getting to know each other through their heartbreak, as it is a story about Daphne just getting to know herself again. I feel like there's maybe a general theme of the books that I like, and it's just like coming of age stories, but in your older 20s, I guess, and just coming back to yourself. I just loved following Daphne as she figured out what she wanted from life and what she loved, and not being influenced by the men in her life, and just truly figuring out what was good for her and what was not. And this is a book that I will truly cherish. It like genuinely means the world to me, and I haven't reread it yet, but I'm so excited to. I'm definitely going to, but it's definitely one that has stayed with me, and I think will continue to stay with me for a very long time. The next book is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I love Annabelle Monaghan so much. I've enjoyed every book that she's put out. This one I really loved. This is about Allie, and Allie is going through it. She has not worn hard pants in a very long time, and she's just going through the motions, living her everyday life, trying to stay afloat. And then one day she decides to get dressed up because she's like, you know what, it's time. I've got to take care of myself. So she decides to get dressed up, and she just takes her dog to the dog park. And what do you know? Her dog goes and pees on a man. This sets off the sweetest meet cute, the sweetest relationship. I think what I truly loved about this book is that it was just about two adults with normal lives that enjoyed their lives, they enjoyed where they were at, and they were just trying to make a relationship work and make sense. And they weren't like, there was lots of yearning and some irresponsibility, but they were just like so level-headed, and I think that that was really nice to see. I think so many romances now are just like, you just forget everything that's going on in your world and you dive right into the romance, and I think that's fun, and like it's a great escapist thing to read. But I loved how true to life this was. I loved how much Allie was like, well, no, I still have my kids, I still have to take care of my kids, I still have to go to my job every day and maintain my relationships with my friends and my family, but there's also this new and exciting thing that I want to pursue, and these new feelings that I'm trying to process. And I just loved it. I thought it was incredibly well done. It was fun. I think Annabelle Monaghan does a really great job at balancing light and heavy, and just really taking you to real gritty places, but it's always got a happy ending, and it's always got a lot of fun along the way. I just loved this one. I thought it was so good. Okay, now we're on to September because I read Summer Romance in June, and then I didn't read another book all summer. All summer I was picking up books and putting them down. Nothing was really holding my attention until I picked up The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a literary thriller set in 1975 at an upstate New York summer camp. The book opens in August, and one of the campers has gone missing and just vanished out of her bed in the middle of the night. However, as scary as this is, she's not just any ordinary camper. The camper is Barbara von Lahr, and she is the daughter of the owner of the summer camp. So everyone is freaking out, not only because she's gone, but because she once had an older brother whom she never met, who also disappeared on the same grounds 14 years before. This book was so well written. I don't normally love thrillers because I feel like they can be kind of outlandish and silly, but this book had so much depth. It was so serious but lyrical, and I was just with Liz every single step of the way. This book changes perspectives, it changes timelines, it changes seasons. There's so much going on. It's so much more than just a girl going missing from summer camp, and I was immersed the entire time. There was not a moment for me that I wanted to put the book down. I just was ready and willing to listen to the whole thing and figure out what happened and what the heck is going on with this family in upstate New York. It was not even fast paced, which is something that was so interesting about it. Like, I felt like it was just a quiet, slow book, but then everything just kind of snowballs slowly, and you're like putting all these random pieces together, and the perspectives kind of range from like the camp counselors and the workers that live in the town around the camp, and then the wealthy family that owns the camp, and the history of all of that. I was just blown away by it. I think it was masterfully crafted. It wasn't just like thrown together. You can tell that she spent a lot of time working on this story, and I think it really, really paid off. I loved this book. I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, then I read Normal People. I read this in a 24-hour reading vlog, so I can link it for you if you want to watch it and see all of my thoughts on this book. But I was so pleasantly surprised by this. I read many years ago Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, and I hated that book. I did not like it at all. I spent years and years wondering about Normal People because I've only heard incredible things. People love Normal People, and I've heard great things about the show, and so I was so curious about this book, and I really wanted to know what the hype was all about. And let me tell ya, I loved it. This book follows Connell and Marianne, and they're just two normal people. It opens to them in high school, and they share some classes, but Connell's mom works for Marianne's parents, and so they kind of are thrown together often outside of school. And then the book follows them and their relationship through college and into adulthood, and it truly is just about normal people. Like, this book is so character driven, but it was still so enthralling. I don't typically love a character driven story. I'm really a plot girl, but I was never bored with this book because I read it in 24 hours. I read it in one sitting, and I think that really worked for me reading this book, because I think if I had put it down, I maybe would have gotten bored or not picked it back up. But reading it all in one go really just kept me invested and curious in the story, and curious about Marianne and Connell and what would happen to them and where they would go. And like, in a lot of ways, nothing happens, but also so much happens, so much growing. The two of them grow up together but separately, and their lives like intertwine and meet and separate all throughout their adolescence, and it's just a really beautiful book. It's really incredibly written. I love Sally Rooney's writing style. I know that that's not a popular opinion to have, but I really love it. I think she's so masterful, and I loved this book. I'm so glad I finally gave it a chance and picked it up in 2024. Next up on my list of favorites from 2024 is Magnolia Parks. I read this book in that same 24-hour reading vlog, and I had a feeling that I would like it going into it, but I really did like this book. This book is, like everyone says, it's like Gossip Girl meets London high society, and it's full of drama, it's full of silliness, but there's also a lot of character depth and a lot of story. And the ending of this book I think about all the time. Like, it just ripped my soul out, and I'm so eager to continue on with this series. The only reason I haven't is because I have to get the books from the library, because I want to get like these covers and they don't sell them here. So I'm just reading them from the library, but oh man, I really liked this book. I'm not going to spend too long talking about it because I'm sure you've heard about it before, but it really worked for me, and I am looking forward to continuing with the rest of the series. Okay, the last book on my favorites list from 2024 is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This book is very short, but so extremely impactful. I read this book in one sitting. I think you could too. And this is about a very important time in Irish history that I had no idea about before reading this book. Essentially, this follows a man who is a coal merchant, and he's living in a small town in Ireland, and he sells coal to all of the local businesses. One of those businesses is the local convent. One day he is delivering to the local convent, and he notices something that isn't right, and he leaves, and he's kind of left pondering what's going on there. Is there more going on behind closed doors than what we know about? Like, should I do something? What's going on? He's like processing it as he's going day to day. It takes us through this man's life and kind of through his childhood and the events that shaped his mindset and the events that shaped who he is and how he kind of like goes and makes decisions in his life. It talks about his family, his wife, and his daughters, and it's such an important book. Like, I highly recommend everyone read it. Also, the movie version of it just came out with Cillian Murphy. I have not seen it yet, but I really do want to see it. And I only read it because I heard the movie was coming out, but I'm so glad I did. Claire Keegan's writing is incredible, and it's such an impactful story. I have one extra book that I want to talk about. This is a Christmas book. I don't know if it's in like my top 10, but I love this book so much. And that is The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. I love Ali Carter. I've loved her since I was a little kid, and I grew up reading her like spy books. I think I have them here somewhere. I'm so glad Ali Carter has started writing adult books, and I was so hyped about this book. This book is about Maggie and Ethan, which, side note, is the name of my mom and my brother, so that was kind of weird for me. But this book follows Maggie and Ethan. They both are authors at the same publishing house. They both write mystery books, but they couldn't be more different. And just before Christmas, they each get invited by their biggest fan to go to her house and spend Christmas with her. So they go to this person's house, they have this welcome dinner, the family is there, there's some other people there, they have this cozy evening in her library, and then they wake up the next morning and this person has gone missing. So it follows these two authors that write mysteries that are trying to solve a mystery themselves. And so they're using all these different tropes and they're just like trying to put all these pieces together, and there's some romance. There's just so much going on. It was so well written. It was so fun and I really, really loved it. And I didn't want to leave the video of favorites without talking about it because I had such a good time with this book. Those were my favorite books of the year. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll have way more books to talk about at the end of 2025, but those are the books that stand out for me this year. I'm so glad I got to read them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I love ya and I appreciate you so much, and I will hopefully catch you in the next one. Bye.